Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about season 6, episode 17, Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night. You can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves. Yeah, let's do it.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you said let's do it because there's a lot to unpack tonight in this particular episode, and I really do want to get right to it. Of course, we're still going to do our weekly check-in stuff because I feel like that's important. I like a little bit of consistency between our shows. So I will have to say, of course, you should find us and follow us everywhere that you happen to do your social medias because we're great, we're awesome, we're a good time, but we're not on X. So don't look for us there anywhere else. And it's just fine. And of course, you can listen to us anywhere you happen to listen to podcasts. Like I check in from time to time on Spotify. Um, so of course, like I said, like do our quick weekly check in. So David, how has your week been?
Week's been fine. My my reading has been interesting, but not much to talk about. Rereading the first Silo book. It's called Wool. By if you cared to know. Um, like I said, the 48 Laws of Power. Been rereading through that. That's also been fun. And then reading the biography of Bibi Netanyahu, which he released in 2022, which was right before he became prime minister again in Israel, and before October 7th that happened last year. So he definitely needs to add an addendum to his book, but I'm only about halfway through. Other than that, um, work's been fine. I mean, nothing crazy at work, but yeah. How about you?
No, pretty much consistent with the work thing. As you know, we just got through the presidential election cycle, so we have people who are dealing with their, fallout one way or another. Either you are elated or you're not. There are all kinds of smatterings of who's going to, leave the country and so forth and so on. I did
I
see an
dare
interesting
you.
thing.
Do it.
Well,
Don't just say
so that's what I was
it.
gonna say. I did see an interesting thing that I don't know if this is true or not, but it did say that it was like an announcement from Tom Hanks of all people saying that he had left the country. Now, I do know that he has a dual citizenship with Greece, but
hmm
I don't know if he's completely given up his American citizenship to go there or if he just went on a
I
celebrity
don't think he
vacation.
did. I heard about
Um,
some of that
yeah.
too. I looked it up, and it you can have dual citizenship in America pretty easily.
Yeah, yeah,
So
like a lot of people apparently do have dual citizenship with somewhere.
right,
Apparently that's
especially the elites in our society. What do you
yeah,
know?
not right. So, I guess if anybody's going to leave the country, it would be those people who have dual citizenship. I don't have dual citizenship.
I can't care
I,
less about Tom Hanks.
yeah,
Get out, Tom. Get
um,
out.
now
We're
I
gonna
will
be
say
bombed this weekend. You can eat it.
I
I
don't know
mean, you
what
can
movie
eat
you're.
it in Greece. I mean, of all the places to go after leaving the country, Greece. Like, I don't think he cares either. So get out and quit complaining. That's what I gotta say to him.
Personally, I like Tom Hanks. I don't know
Oh,
what
I
movie
like
that
him
you're
as an
talking
actor.
about.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I think he's made great. I don't know much about his overall political stance. I try my best not to know that much detail about celebrities in general. Cause I just I don't care. I've got enough going on. I don't have time to also be worried about every single celebrity's whatever. Now, if they come out and say something or do something that is horrendous, then yeah, that's a different story. But otherwise they're just mouthpieces to me.
Mhm.
I don't care. So there was that. So like I said, people are, one way or another. Again, you're either happy or you're not. Um, Depending on where you are on things, either your life is getting ready to change or it's not. I think that for the majority of us, things are probably not going to change that much. I don't see it. Um, I could be wrong. Who knows? But I just like for me, for example, I don't feel like my life is going to change that much. I feel like I'm a very average citizen. I pay my taxes. My kid goes to school. I do what I'm supposed to do. not on the wrong side of the law. I don't make a whole lot of money. Just I don't see stuff being whatever. So again, just trying to ride this out, move on to the next. All right. So there's that. Other than that, yeah, work has been, like I said, fairly consistent. Workouts are fairly consistent. Um, yeah, we're doing okay here. So um, anyway, moving on, since we're
Yeah.
both just
Move on.
like things changed. All right, we're going to get into this episode. That's what we're really here about. We don't really care
Right.
about politics. We really try our best to stay out of politics on
You'll
this show.
notice I didn't say anything until you brought it
Yeah.
up.
Well, I will bring it up because these are things that these mark the passage of time. These are events that happen,
True.
and this show, the show kind of frames some things for us too. So sometimes you have to bring them up to for context. So
Right.
I always just like to remark on them. But again, I didn't go into it and be like, oh, I hate so and so, and I wish this one had won, and oh, if only no. You'll never hear me go into anything like that on
Right.
this. I will just say, hey, this is what happened. You're either happy or you're not.
Right.
Right, and that's the truth. You're either happy or you're not. So, there you go. But yeah, we're here to talk about Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night, a Kira heavy episode, and
Been
quite
a
possibly it's
while.
it's been a while, and this is such a surprisingly
This is
dark and
probably
complex episode. It's
yes.
wonderful.
This is
Um,
arguably the darkest episode the show's had, and it's had some dark
today,
ones.
yeah,
Kira is the one who has
yeah,
to shoulder the dark episodes, and man,
and this is this is
woo-hoo-hoo.
um, this is an interesting episode in the sense of there's a theory that Cisco that while Cisco is the emissary, that Kira also could have been the emissary. And this episode to me kind of plays into that. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So just be aware. But one of the most delightfully complex episodes they've given us in the sixth season so far. Also, I feel like this is an episode that gets missed a lot. Like when you're doing a rewatch, typically this is one that is skipped and really shouldn't be. Very heavy on a character development here for both Kira and Ducat of all people, and just really shows you how messed up and creepy Ducat really is. So, of course, before we get into all that, David, do you want to give the recap, or would you like me to do it?
Who did it last week? I mean, this is an episode that like it needs a good recap, but like,
I,
who did it last week?
I don't
Was
know.
it
I think you did. What was the episode last week?
last week? Let me look it up. That was the Change of Heart episode with Worf and Dax going
I
and
think
trying
maybe I
to
did that
save the
one.
Cardassian guy.
I think maybe I did that one because it was Worf. I think
Right.
maybe it was me.
All right. So
So
should I do this one?
if you want to,
All right. Okay. All right. So Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night, which is also, according to Wikipedia, a reference to I guess, the drama Prometheus Unbound by Percy Shelley, if you care about the background there on the title. But anyway, all right. This episode, as we mentioned, is a Kira heavy episode. We start briefly with um, Worf and Dax talking and, just being their cutesy little selves. Dax wants to host a party. Worf doesn't want that. Apparently, Quark was hoping for the party to happen because when Dax says that it didn't go through, he's kind of sad about it. But Dax comes across Kira as she's leaving Quark's, and Kira has some flowers that she says were her mother's favorite flowers, and today would have been her 60th birthday. Um, Later that night, she gets a call. Kira gets a call, and it's from an unknown source. And she answers it, and it's none other than Gul Dukat. And Gul Dukat claims that after he escaped in the episode where he and Cisco crash landed on the way to his court martial slash trial, I guess the court martial is not quite right, his trial, he escaped. We don't know where he is, but he's sending a message to Kira. He says that Cisco opened his eyes to the importance of telling the truth. So he's calling Kira to let her know the truth about her mother. She didn't die, like Kira thinks, when she was 3 in a raid on a refugee camp, she was his mistress. She was his lover. And to prove that she was, he makes some comments about a scar she had on her face, how she put her hair down to keep the scar hidden, and says a number of other things that indicate that Kira's mother, whose name was Maru, was actually his mistress. So Kira, as you can imagine, is pretty pissed to hear this. Denies everything that's Gul Dukat is saying, and she goes to Ops and kind of chews out O'Brien, chews out Bashir. When she goes and kind of chews out Odo, Odo says, "Instead of you being irritable, why don't you go do something about what's causing you to be upset?" So she goes to Cisco and asks Cisco that as the emissary, give her a recommendation to go see the Orb of Time, which would allow her to travel to the past and determine the truth of Gul Dukat's claims. Cisco is initially reluctant, but does allow her to do this. And Cisco goes, sees the Orb of Time, and is transported to the past. And in the past, she sees her mother and father and herself as like a 6-year-old, along with her two young siblings, all in a refugee camp. And she fights off some Bajorans who are, scrounging for food. But Cardassians come with a Bajoran leading them to say that they are rounding up women to serve as quote unquote comfort women for the Cardassian officers. And of course, he picks out the all the women in the room effectively, including Kira, who has appeared in person in this vision of the past. She claims her name is Luma. She appears, but her mother is there. She is one of the women that is taken to go be a comfort woman, one of the comfort women. They're taken to Terok Nor, which we know as Deep Space Nine. They are given quarters and food, and told that the families that they were taken from will also be given food as a, we took you from your family, so we'll compensate them by feeding them. But in their quarters is a bounty of food and other things that they haven't seen in ages. And even though Maru enjoys all this wonderful food she hasn't seen in ages, she does break down when she considers that she's lost her family, and expresses some surprise that Nerys, which Kira, who we know as Luma, is being so friendly with her. In the morning, all of the women are dressed up and made to stand at attention, basically, as they are inspected. Gul Dukat comes in and singles out Maru. He notices her scar and gets a device that allows him to heal the scar basically immediately. At a later dinner, he throws off a officer that's kind of all over her in this weird kind of sex party. I mean, we don't see anyone naked or anything, but all the officers
That's
are,
what it was.
yeah, all the officers are, talking with all these
Comfort
women. Yeah, some of them seem to have kind of accepted what they're doing and that they have to do it, but Kira and Maru seem, they're off in a corner and they don't seem to want to participate. But this one guy grabs Maru off to the side and is trying to kiss her and force himself on her. And Gul Dukat comes in and throws the guy off. But right before he says a final line, something about please don't please don't blame all of us for the bad actions of one individual. The man that Kira had been approached by, he says the line before Gul Dukat says it. And when Kira asks him, how did you know he was going to say, he says, oh, he does this all the time. It's not the first time he's done this. So Maru gets, Maru and Kira were sharing a room, a room together, and Maru is taken out to go be Gul Dukat's mistress. Later, Nerys demands to go see Maru, but she is instead tossed to go work in the mines on the station or work the processing plant. So she's thrown out from being a comfort woman. She does meet up with a a resistance guy who tries to recruit her to the resistance, but she refuses. She doesn't want to participate, she says. Instead, she trying to get back to being with Maru. And later she does. It turns out Maru has requested her, and Gul Dukat agreed. And we find Maru is now kind of comfortable with the idea of being Gul Dukat's mistress. She's dressed nicely, has her hair done. When you know when Kira says, he's evil and we got to fight against him and we need to escape, and she defends Gul Dukat. She's um, sympathetic to Dukat, says he treats her well. You know, and Gul Dukat, he doesn't know Kira because this is again the past, but he's like, of course I treat her well. I would never harm her. Well, you know, Kira is incensed by her mother's, Maru's, seemingly acceptance of this relationship. And so she goes to the resistance guy and allows him to give her a bomb in the form of one of the earrings they wear that will blow up as soon as it's been set, or shortly after it's been timed, so it can't be undone once she sets it. So she pretends to go back to Maru to apologize for um, speaking out and breaking the relationship, but she's only there to plant the bomb, which she does. But as soon as she does plant the bomb, she sees Maru get a message from her husband, which of course is Kira's father. And he says, "Oh, we're doing so well. Thank you for what you're doing. We're getting food. Even Kira, the girl, 6-year-old girl, she's gained 5 pounds. So whatever you're doing," to his wife, whatever you're doing, it's great for us. We are doing well, and thank you for all your sacrifices, basically. So Kira has a change of heart about the bomb going off, and so she instead warns Maru and Dukat about the bomb, and they manage to escape just in time for the bomb to go off. And once the bomb has gone off and saved everyone, Major Kira returns to the present. Um, and she talked about it with Cisco about how when she was younger, she could treated all collaborators as evil, and to find out that her mother was a collaborator of some kind is devastating. But it gives some gray area to the situation, and Cisco tries to kind of talk about it with her. So a very, very rough episode in the sense that it's tackling some adult themes. This is not a fun run and gun shoot 'em up. We have a scientific, dilly dally technobabble problem to solve. This is directly addressing, you know, rape effectively. Um, the occupation forces. Um, how do you deal with that, especially as a woman, when you're forced to uh, be put upon? Are you complicit if you kind of let yourself go along with it? How much do you have to resist? Um, yeah, this was a quite an episode. I can see why people would want to skip it if they're just looking for a casual viewing.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it's definitely
yeah,
one you this can't be a casual viewing. This is one of those episodes that when I do my own like rewatch, like I said, a lot of initially you skip it, but it's one of those now. Considering how we binge watch shows, I think this would have been an episode that, in that moment when you're like probably ready to turn it off, you would watch this one and say, "Okay, I'm gonna watch one more." This being the one more, it would make you want to watch a couple more because it's such a gripping story that suddenly you would find yourself in it. And then the fact that it doesn't really have a true end, a true conclusion. We don't we um there's no resolution here for Kira per se.
right.
It's a lot to take in, and yeah, I just think this was one of those that will really get you, and especially as a person who's watched Deep Space Nine multiple times at different points through my life, like stuff like this really stands out more now than it ever did when I was younger because I just didn't get it, you
Mhm.
know. But now, as an adult and having experienced more in my own life, this is definitely a way more complicated episode, and it makes me just wonder sometimes, like, what other stuff do I need to really go back that I watched as a kid that I need to watch again because it's bound to be different and an eye opener.
Right.
So, as always, as this is your first time watching the episode, what did you think of this one overall?
Yeah. Well, first I'll start with the stuff that um well, I'll start with this. Like, so for example, the fact that this is like the first time I can really think of we've heard of the orb of time. And not only is it the
Mhm.
first time I've really heard about it, but it can let you travel to the past, and not just travel to the past. But Cisco says to her when she comes to him initially to say, "Hey, let me go do this." He's like, "Hey, the Federation doesn't like people messing with the timeline." And she's like, "I'm not coming to you for as a Federation officer. I'm coming to you as the emissary. I want you to put in a good word for me so I can go do this." And part of me is like, Cisco overstepping his bounds? Like, she has a close relationship with him, so he could just say, "Hey, let her do this thing." So part of me is it's not a big deal, but part of me is like, is Cisco kind of overplaying it maybe a minute? Um, and then the time travel essence, it's not that Kira goes back and just has a vision of what happened, but she participates in it, which is interesting because if she was actually there, like Cisco was insinuating, and therefore able to change the timeline, then the blowing up of Ducat would seemingly be a pretty major moment, and I would think he would then recognize Kira from that time period. Maybe, I don't know, but it really makes the
Yeah.
creepiness of Gul Dukat. I mean, this whole episode makes Gul Dukat. I mean, he's already proven himself to be beyond redemption. This man needs to
Okay.
die in a shredder. He needs to
So we need to
die
we need to
in a
start. We will start there and with a couple of things. So first,
yeah,
there are 10 orbs total.
right,
We know that there are 10. Now, we've only really seen, I think, 3 to 4. So in
right,
this one we get the orb of time. We know of the orb of prophecy and change. We there was what was the other ones? I forget the names of the other ones, but I think that we've only really seen 4 orbs.
right.
Um so basically these are the great plot devices that they'll pop up to do what we need them to do
That's
whenever. And
exactly
right, and so by giving us that there are, since we know that there are 10, these can pop up at any point, and I don't believe that we ever really see more than 5 total. So there's at least 5 on there that we never hear about. We don't even know their names. So there's that. The next thing, yeah, Ducat is a problem for several reasons. One, the creepiest reason, of course, is that we know from earlier seasons of the show how he was intensely interested in Kira, and he was, trying to, woo her and be with her, and in a very romantical, intimate sense.
hmm
But this episode sets us up with a couple of problems because him being with her mother, Maru, knowing her name is Kira Maru, when he would
hmm
later encounter Kira Nerys, there's no way he wouldn't have made the connection if he spent as much time as we're led to believe in this episode that he did
right,
with Maru.
right.
Um, Also, just how old is Ducat?
Yeah,
Because
the age
he's
problem becomes
he's yeah,
noticeable.
and now granted, this can all be explained away with the fact that we don't know how Cardassians age. We don't know, their upper limits of years and things like that. Vulcans can live to be 200 plus years old,
Right.
so maybe there's a similar thing with Cardassians. We just don't know. But regardless of what we don't know about Cardassians and their aging, we do know that their memories don't suffer enough that he should have forgotten the name Kira, so that when Kira Nerys showed up on the station or in the Resistance and everything else, that he didn't know who she was. So to me, he knew who she was. He had already, we find out in this episode that Maru died in a Cardassian hospital some years, what was it, 5 or 6 years before
seven
they
years
got to
later
the,
is what she says.
yeah, yeah. So she lived for a good while as a comfort woman of Ducat's. Then Ducat is back on the station. We see later on, we see on the other episode where they went back into the past where Odo was the security guard. We know that Ducat was there then.
Right.
Presumably, this would have been after Maru had gone to Cardassia and died.
Hmm.
And so then that means that when Ducat was coming up, he was also aware of the Shakar resistance cell and keeping tabs on them. He would have known that Kira Nerys was in the resistance cell. So he's been tracking her, presumably, for years.
Yeah.
And he's obsessed with it officially becomes obsession.
Well,
He's,
it's been
by
obsession, but
the way,
this is beyond creepy. This is straight up. Well, it's stalkerish behavior, but
it's
it's
almost
also
grooming
robbing the
behavior.
cradle.
Yeah, it's
It's
yeah.
robbing the cradle. That's the
It's a bit of a
weirdest part.
grooming behavior. He's been obsessed with this family and manipulating and taking from this family from the get-go, you
Right.
know? So, yeah, there's a sick, sick man,
Yeah.
Ducat.
Yeah. I mean, he
Ugh.
was always a villain, and he's always been shown like they did that weird bit. I don't know if it's weird. It was just there were this bit where like in season 4 he was kind of going on this maybe redemption arc where like maybe he's gonna come back from being um, the straight up villain that he was. He's kind of an unwilling ally or an unhappy ally to Cisco at times. But man,
Yeah, he rode that shades of gray pretty hard for a bit there. And yes,
right.
just when we thought that he was gonna kind of turn the corner and be, a dissenting voice of good for the greater Cardassian people, yeah, no, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Um, just what a total just mind everything about this character. I mean, I think that they did a great job with casting Ducat as this villain foil whatever for Cisco. Like everything that Cisco is not, Ducat perfectly embodies. He's such the consummate politician. He's slimy. He's got his own nefarious ambitions. He's not afraid to use people and manipulate people, and he's just gross.
Yeah.
And they do such a great job with him. And Mark Alimo, to his credit, I can't think of another actor who would have done that role um, as well as he did.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because he's been with us since the beginning. Was he in the
Yeah,
Was he in the pilot? He was in the pilot, right?
he wasn't the pilot. And he's actually one of our OG Cardassians. Go back
Yeah,
to the Next Generation where we first see Cardassians. Um, Mark Alimo plays the Cardassian there.
right,
Go Masset, I think was his name in that
mm,
episode.
right.
So yeah, and there's even a little write-off canon there about Masset and Ducat being brothers or cousins, which explains their similar look.
Similarities. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But I mean, the question this episode was asking the whole time was how much did Maru give into, submit, agree with? How much did she like? Did she become a true lover
comfort
of
woman.
Ducat? Did she
Well, yeah, yeah.
truly betray her family? I mean, when Kira says collaborators, to be very clear, I think of a collaborator as someone like that Bajoran guy who was kind of like he was like the eunuch who would like tell the women what to do, and our
Oh,
great
that
leader, our or not
Basso,
leader,
the
but
guy in this episode,
yeah, like
Basso, who was ordering them around.
he's the worst. He's a Bajoran, like treating Bajoran women badly. Like it's not even like a Cardassian running around being a jerk and saying, "You women come with me." It was a Bajoran working on Gold Dukat's behalf who was doing all that, which I can see that happening in real life. It just is so surprising and shocking to see it. But the real question is like, how much does Maru does she like this at some point? Does she truly
That
has she
uh,
has she
I think
gone
that's the
over
part.
on some level?
What you're talking about and your hesitation about it. This is exactly what they want you to
Right,
talk about. This is the ambiguity part of it. Did Maru truly give in and fall in love with Ducat, or
right,
was she just doing what she needed to do to make sure that her family is taken care of? And the message that she receives from Taban at the end of the episode, where he's like, We're back home. The kids are playing and laughing. Nerys has gained weight because we're being so taken care of. We know of the sacrifice that you're making for us, and we see her crying a bit. When he's telling her that he still loves her, but we know what she's been up to on the
Right.
station, and seeing really kind of how much she does enjoy it. She's holding his hand, she's kissing him, she's eating all the food, she's got the nice dresses on, and the hair is done, and she seems to really be, happy there.
Right.
To which even Taban says in his message that if you can find happiness, then do so and hold on to it. So it's almost like he's giving her the permission that she needs to move forward and continue with what she's going through.
And yeah,
Um,
and the real question for him becomes, because we know that she was taken to be a comfort woman. It's not that was clearly stated what
that
she
was
was
stated
taken.
right away when they came through, when Basso and company came through, they stated that's exactly what they were looking for.
Right.
So
But
yeah.
does he know that it's Gold Dukat that she's with? Is she just? Let me put it this way: we know that the Bajorans and the Kira family are really put upon by the time all this happens. Like they are desperate. When the episode, when we first meet the family, Kira has to beat up two guys who want to steal the soup that the family has received, uh, because they think they can prey on them, and Kira has to beat them up. So like it's desperate times, desperate measures. So if they truly are desperate, it truly has been so long since Maru has seen food that is enjoyable and such. And as a child, she remembered thinking about being dressed, up nicely. Is it is it just the case that they have just, because of they're just downtrodden, that they have just submitted to their fate a bit? Because that would make sense. Like it would be a terrible thing to endure, but
Yeah.
I mean, let me put it this way: I don't know what happened in the Holocaust to all the people that died in the Holocaust, but how many women were told, "Hey, come over here, and you can."
Well, we know that happened. We know that there were
Well,
women
exactly.
during the Holocaust and during World War II. We know there
Right.
were Jewish women who were taken from concentration camps and basically given to the Nazi soldiers, and
Right.
some of them really did, stay with them for quite a long time, gave birth to
Right.
their children, so forth. And we
Right.
know that after the fall of the Third Reich, that a lot of these women were cast out of their towns, attacked, head shaved, beaten, I believe even if you were killed because of the fact that they did put up with bedding down with Nazi soldiers.
Right.
It
But
definitely happened.
but that's definitely the question though too. Is like how many of them did it because, to be frank, they are promiscuous women. They were already promiscuous before the Nazis came, promiscuous afterward. How many of them did it out of necessity? How many of them, like, oh my gosh, the level of moral complexity around this issue is really
Yeah,
deep and dark. I mean, when this episode says things darker than death or night, like it's not wrong.
not joking.
This,
and
yes.
and so and so yeah, as people who are viewing this from that more personal perspective of Kira, who, as she says early on, this was or not early on but later, she said she always kind of knew how to categorize people as collaborators or not, because she used her mother as a frame of reference. She knew what her mother
Right.
had done, that her mother had died in this refugee camp, and so to her mother was a hero. Anybody who didn't have the same level of dedication that her mother had demonstrated, they were traitors, they were collaborators. And now she
Right.
finds out this very complicated thing about her mom. And
Right.
even then, there's a part of her that was like, nope, your mom's a collaborator. We've got to, got to take her out. So I think that's what they want you to recognize too, is that in any situation, in any war, long term occupation, whatever, there's always going to be these people who muddy the waters a bit, and it's never going to be a clear separation of an issue, and finding a way to either make peace with that or to lump them in with one group or the other is the hardest thing that a person can do. And for Kira, it certainly was, because in addition to this being a person who, she admired and so forth, and now that being changed, it's also her mom,
Yeah.
so big time struggle here for her.
Yeah. I guess the other thing I'm just thinking of when I talked about the desperate measures is how much does her Kira's father, like, how much did he know? How much is he like? Let me put it this way: Kira Nerys, she wouldn't stand for any of this. She didn't stand for it. Whenever she talked to her mother, she was like, "We need to hang strong. We need to fight back. We need to escape." So if Kira was in the place of her father, I don't think she would have been very, "Oh, thank goodness we have food for
Well,
all your sacrifice," which feels like the morally right position of, like, you fight, you don't give up, you keep going. But in some ways that's the flaw of fiction. Fiction, you can make things happen. Your scruffy little character can fight against the power and finds the win. But in real
well,
life, that
I don't think it's necessarily the flaw of fiction. I think it's more the flaw of single-mindedness. Because Kira grows up idolizing her mother from the perspective given to her by her father. Her father, who it seems like was very much aware of what Maru was taken to do and
right,
become, he chose to tell Kira a story, and he even says he told the children that she was at the refugee camp. He said he felt like that was best. So that, to me, he's alluding in that message that he's very much aware of what his wife is up to, and he's making his peace with it because it's benefiting himself and the children. And
right,
for both Maru and for Taban, the children seem to be their biggest concern. And so, why I say this is a fault of single mindedness, it's easy to say, be courageous, don't give up, fight on, fight forever, be the resistance when you are a single entity that you have to care about, when there is nothing else that is taking your time, energy, and attention. But when you become a parent, for example, ideally you are willing to sacrifice certain things so that your next generation can move on in the hopes that they have better, that they survive to something better. And
right,
so for Kira, this is she represents that. She grew up with this very singular view of her mother. She's also a very singular person. She does not have any children. She doesn't have any attachments to anyone else. Her only concern is herself. Now she can devote herself to something grander and noble like a resistance and throwing off the oppressing Cardassian population. But if
right,
she's killed in action, she's not leaving behind orphans. And so with Maru and Taban, they are making a sacrifice of their personal relationship, their marriage, and so forth, so that their kids can survive.
right.
And so that's the part there that I'm noticing the most in this episode. And for people who are like, well, Kira should have gone through with it, she should have killed her, she was a collaborator, I just make what would you do for your children?
Yeah.
Like, are you saying nope, give no quarter, you can't, it's one or the other? Or would you say, you know what, I'm going to do whatever it takes for them to survive?
Yeah, and I would say, I think Kira would say that when she planted the bomb, she wasn't trying to kill her mom. She was trying to kill the Golden Cot, but had come, as she says to the guy who gives her the bomb, like, "I don't care that my mom will die," because at that point she had lost hope, lost faith in her mother,
Yeah.
which is very sad. But she's not doing it to kill her mom; she's doing it to kill the Golden Cot. Um,
And I believe she'd also kind of come to the conclusion that her mother had betrayed her father. She wasn't aware until she
yes,
heard the message. She wasn't aware. And so I
right,
think that, again, she came into this whole thing really kind of idolizing her father to a certain degree. And she was
right,
like, you lied to my father all these years. Like, my father had always thought that you had gone to this refugee camp. You were being kept from us in the camp. You eventually died in the camp. Now here I am finding out you did something else entirely, and this man was still loving and devoted to you. So I'm ready to write you off, because this is also a way for me to, again, very singular, I am now able to switch this over and idolize my father, who did everything he could to raise us and take care of us while you were off doing this horrible thing, lying
Right.
to him and betraying him. And then she hears the message and realizes this muddies everything. Now not even her image of her father is safe because he was aware. He knew about this situation and he saw how they were benefiting from it. And he even told his wife, if you can find moments of joy and happiness in this, do so.
Right.
That's what he tells her. And she hears it. And so now that's why she suddenly changed her tack, and it was to save Maru and Dukat.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's a good episode in the sense that it goes there, but it's so dark that it's like I said, not an episode that I want to come back to and like, oh, this is a fun one. This is not a fun episode.
It's not. It's not. And the question is asked as to whether or not her father was coerced to make that message. You could potentially make that argument, but I feel like there's enough in it, the
It
message
looks
itself,
genuine.
that it
Yeah.
looks genuine. So, I mean, he doesn't seem like he's reading something. There seems to be some earnest emotion there when he's giving his message. So I don't think that he was being coerced. I think that for him it was kind of just what they say. His wife was gone. The family has now returned to their home. They're benefiting. The children are happy and healthy, and he's not fully aware of everything that Maru is doing,
Yeah.
but he knows that whatever she's doing is benefiting the children. So
Yeah.
he's making his peace with it, and he wants her to do the same.
Yeah. I think we should point out that, we know that this didn't go on forever. I mean, we know that she died. Maru died 7 years later, but we also know that Kira's father died in the caves in a resistance cell kind of
Yeah.
place. That was an episode. I think it was last season because the old Cardassian guy who she had bonded with had come to Deep Space
Hmm.
Nine, and he dies on the station, and
And
she
she's having a hard time reconciling because her father died sick and alone
while she was on a mission,
yeah.
and she she had heard that the Cardassians she bonded with had been a part of some other tragedy and had considered not being there when he died, and that's where you and I disagreed. Like you want the dark ending, you want Kira to not go back to him. She's still angry, but I was the one who's like, I want the happy ending. I want the people to be reconciled. Um, and again, that episode was I didn't love that
Another great
episode.
one.
I didn't love that one, but I did say that Kira or Nana Visitor as Kira, like she landed that last scene where she's like crying about it, like she's teary eyed and everything. Like she nailed that final scene. So from remembering that scene to this one, we know that while things might be nice now, we also know that things didn't stay that way. Um, at what point did things go south once again? I don't know. I guess the thing I'm just thinking of, and this is me in my own room, happy and safe and belly full. You know, part of me is like, shouldn't he have known better that this was they were just manipulating him? It may not have been a coerced message, but it certainly was a manipulated message. Like, you know, they feed him some food like they fed her some food, get him to record a message, and then 10 minutes later they throw him out on his butt with his kids out on the street again. And as far as Maru knows, things are going well, but it turns out, maybe they aren't. I'm just saying that the whole thing was manipulative,
Oh yeah.
and that's what the question comes down to. When you're so downtrodden, everything around you is out of your control. At what point do you try and go with the flow? At what point do you try and fight back? Because Kira's answer is always fight back. And the message she has to learn in this episode is not everyone who didn't fight back was a straight up collaborator,
Collaborator.
straight up betrayer of Bajor who was not torn up by the things that we're having to do. And especially Maru. I mean, the scene where all the officers are chatting up the women. I have to say, I honestly can't understand why anyone would find that interesting. I'm not from the women's perspective. As a man, I can't imagine going up to a woman and saying, "Sit on my lap, honey," and make all
Well,
these comments. You know, I just
so
I'm
so
not saying that.
this was about a demonstration of power and
Oh,
control.
I
These
totally understand. I'm just saying on a
Yeah.
personal level, I
Well,
don't get
right,
it.
you're not that well, for one, you're not that kind of guy, nor have you lived that kind of life. These are hardened soldiers who are used to doing some pretty horrendous things on a regular basis. This is why they need um comfort women, because no one is approaching them and being like, "You are these heroic, figures. You are the invading force. You are awful. You are the oppressors. You are the murderers. You are so forth and so on." So, this is very much the only way they're going to get what they want is by the continued manipulation of power and control, which is what they're doing here. And
Right.
so, I mean, that's why even the one, however staged you want to say that it is, he grabs Maru and there's no talking. He's not trying to smooth talk his way into her heart. He pushes her up against the wall and starts kissing on her and groping her and all the rest of it, in plain view of everyone else. This because we know this
Right.
is a bit of a display, a bit of an act. But again, you know, the Bajoran women that were there, they didn't know that. So they're
Yeah.
watching one of their own be once again used, subjugated,
Yeah.
you know? And yeah, it's par for the course for them. So
Right.
it's a hard thing to really wrap your mind around, sure, as to why anybody could really, act that way or tolerate other people who act that way. But you got to just remember these are not decent people. These are
I know.
not,
I'm
yeah,
not
like
saying I don't
yeah,
understand
we would,
that. I'm
yeah,
just saying on a personal level, it's so off-putting.
yeah.
The fact that that's even realistic, even in any capacity, is just mind-blowing in some
And we
ways.
would like to think, that
Yeah.
our own military personnel, when they go somewhere or whatever, that they would never act this way, that they would never treat people this way, and that if we, for however that happened, got into the military and were having to serve whatever, that we would never treat people this way, you know. But I mean, that's there. There's historically there's evidence that soldiers did treat people this way when they went places. So it's not like they just some writer just had a random crazy moment
Oh,
and came up with this. This
I
is
know.
there's plenty of unfortunately there is plenty of evidence that
100%.
um, soldiers have done these things. So that
I
that
guess what
sucks.
I'm ultimately getting at, like, I can understand a soldier going and finding a woman who puts on an act at the very least of being into the attention. But when Maru and Kira are approached, they don't ever come off as like, "Oh, I'm happy with this attention," or "I'm shy." Like they're clearly not interested. And anyway, that's my point.
That didn't matter to them. That didn't matter to them at all.
Well,
We don't care that you're
some people, some creeps, that's actually what they like. They like the
yeah
putting upon, and I just
yeah
can't. That's why it's
yeah
such a
that
dark
is
episode because it's like I can't. I can understand it in a storytelling kind of way, a historical kind of way, but in like
mhm.
truly get in that mindset and like understand it, appreciate it, can't get
Now
there, and it's man,
so now
wow, dark
you
place.
brought up something. You brought up something that I was gonna save, but I'm gonna bring it up now anyway. You talked about the last episode where or not the last episode, but the previous one with Kira and dealing with aspects of her past and how I wanted this really hardcore ending. I had the
Yeah,
same thought here in
yeah,
watching this one, and what I wanted, which would have set up as kind of like maybe a two-parter or maybe a three-part story arc, was where Kira, so disgusted by her mom, lets the bomb go, like kills her mom, kills Ducat, and whatever and all that. Then she gets thrown back into the future present, whatever, right?
the, she
And
comes out of the
sees
vision or something. Yeah,
comes out of the orb and sees how the world is completely different. Like the Dominion has overrun everything. Damn near everybody is dead.
right,
Just total horror, and it all has to do with the fact that Ducat was not
right,
there to bring
yes,
about certain events. So Ducat is
yes,
like a time linchpin. He is a focal
yes,
point. He needs to exist in order for all
right.
these other things. And so now
That's
she's
exactly
tasked
right.
with, yeah, now she's tasked with going back and she has to save
Saving Gul
Ducat.
Dukat.
save
Yeah,
Ducat, and then the only way to save Ducat is she takes Maru's place.
yeah, something like that. Honestly, I
Something
expected
that
in
would have
some
just
ways, I expected in some ways that to be what actually happened. That when she went to the past, that she somehow was able to take Baru's place and confirm that that Ducat, like she saved her mother from that horrible fate by doing it instead of
by
her
being it
mom,
herself.
and then
Mm.
realizing that I'm not a collaborator. I kind of thought that's where it was going to go at first, so it was different. But I like your story. That's the one that would be great, and I'm sure there's a movie out there somewhere with a similar plot. I mean, I guess this is the plot of Back to the Future 2, actually, because Biff gets a hold of the sports almanac thing,
It makes
and
all the bets.
they go back to the past and he's ruined everything and they have to go back and fix it, and that's what the third movie is about.
Yeah.
But your version is definitely a great, that'd be a great two-parter, it'd be a great cliffhanger.
Mm.
Yes, it turns out the prophets have allowed all the terrible things that Gold Dukat has done over the years because he was also the same incompetent sob that at the beginning of this season allowed the Federation to kick the Dominion's butt back through the wormhole.
Which ultimately brought in Cisco and
Right,
began their whole thing. So without Ducat, there's no ending of the occupation. There's no finding of the wormhole. There's no Cisco the emissary. Nothing. The
yes.
Dominion comes through when they're ready to come through, and they
Right,
lay waste to Bajor, to Cardassia, to the Romulan homeworld, and before you know it, all of the Federation is surrounded by the Dominion, and they've got
right,
no choice but to capitulate. And Cisco, who's still all PTSD'd out from the Borg and Wolf 359, dies on some random Utopia Benicia shipyard, and that's it.
right. Yeah,
And the whole Alpha Quadrant is now under Dominion control, all because Kira killed Ducat in the past,
right.
and now she's got to jump back and save
Undo the
him.
past.
Yes.
Got back to the past, Samurai Jack.
Oh my God, there's something we're gonna talk about one day because I loved that show.
Samurai Jack is one of the best shows of all time. No
Hmm.
questions asked.
Well, now before we get into Samurai Jack, because I could seriously dive in deep, and because I love that show, we do have to talk about some of the behind the scenes things about this episode. Of course, so there were a lot of for this particular episode, there were a lot of other pitches for what they were going to do. They had one where the ghosts of Bajoran children who had been brought to the station to be experimented on were suddenly showing up around the station, and the crew was going to have
Mm,
to reconcile what was going on there and figure that out. They also had where there was something else that happens in this episode that basically brings about Kira and Ducat actually hooking up, being together. This was going to be that episode. Now, the story for that goes that the non visitor heard that they were working on said storyline and was so vehemently opposed that she went over to Ira Stephen Bear, our showrunner and producer, and demanded that they kill that storyline because she felt like it was just totally beyond Kira's character to ever fall for Ducat or any of his tricks or games or anything like that. And so she
especially
was
at this
quite,
point.
yeah,
Yeah.
she was quite vocal that it not happen. And apparently, Bear was not entirely convinced, and he kind of pushed for it a little bit. And it really took her having to kind of, just really dig in on it for them to finally squash that storyline in the last minute. We also know that Mark Alimo had been aware of said storyline and was kind of into it because he also personally had a thing for Nana and wanted to have their characters hook up to some degree. So, yeah,
Mark,
um,
stop it. Stop,
yeah.
Mark.
And you can find all this out if you watch the Star Trek Deep Space Nine documentary, What We Leave Behind. They both give, all three of them, Ira Stephen Bear, Mark Alimo, and Nana Visitor, give detailed interviews about this particular episode and about their characters in general. And Mark admits that he had a almost instant attraction to Kira from the to Nana from the first moment he saw her, which also kind of you see in a lot of the things that they do, but the Nile is very much the opposite. So it's kind of funny to watch how they describe each other and so forth. So yeah, very. uh, very insightful of the Nah to be like, Kira could never. Kira
Right.
could never do this. So, and
Yeah.
I enjoy that a lot.
I mean, if they were ever to give her a Cardassian love interest, it needed to be someone like that other Cardassian, the father figure style. And like that was even the perfect version of her coming to understand and even love, in a fatherly sense, a Cardassian. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't
I
think that she could
Gul
ever
Dukat.
truly. Yeah, I don't think that she could ever really have a romantic relationship with a Kardashian. I think she could, like we saw, come to respect them,
Yes.
like she did the one who
Yeah.
was more like the father figure to her. I think that she could be friendly towards them, even have friends among Kardashians. But to
Right.
that last, getting to
Yeah.
that very intimate, personal level, I don't think she could ever
I
do
agree.
that. So
That would have been a mistake.
yeah,
Glad she
um,
stood up for the character.
yeah, I am too, and I'm glad they did not cross that line. Um, Now, another thing here, as I mentioned early on, the the conspiracy theory, I guess the way to put it, is that Kira could have also have been the emissary. A lot of the stories that we see and a lot of things that happen here, they vary as much as they depend on Cisco to get done. They also depend on Kira and the way that she, is at least present for some things. Like Cisco has his meeting with Kaiopaka, who informs him about himself and his path. She does the same thing for Kira and tells Kira, don't be afraid to, learn about yourself and to trust yourself and to, kind of f- discover your own path as well. She has several orb experiences, just like Cisco does. She's influenced by the prophets in much the same way that Cisco is. Um, the prophets allow her to do certain things that the only other person we see with as much influence is Cisco. So it's the only true distinction between them is that the prophets said it was Cisco
Right.
versus not saying anything about Kira. But that's it. I it's interesting that it worked out that way because I don't think they really intended it to be that way. But if you look at especially all the things that deal with the orbs and the prophets, Cisco and Kira are the two mains who have the most influence and also have the most positive experiences with the orbs than anyone else.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
like that they set that up that way. And if the show had continued into an eighth season with Cisco being, with what happens in the end, I would have enjoyed that him and Kira maintaining this kind of duality of what intercession with the prophets,
Yeah.
those two continuing to be the go-betweens there. I would have liked to see that, but we never know. um, so now Vincent says here in our chat that the prophets talk directly to Cisco, never Kira. That's not entirely true. She does have one orb experience where they do talk to her, and it's early on in season 2, I think, where she has the orb experience with Barial. And then after that, we see the prophets actually use her and speak through her and do things through her. So again, very strong connection to the prophets as well. So that works.
Yeah.
So
Vincent also had a great comment. Vincent had a great comment earlier.
uh,
Kira's mother was in a Kobayashi Maru.
uh,
ah, good pun, Vincent. Good pun. Bad
nice,
pun, but good
nice,
one.
nice Trek pun. Yes, if you know what the Kobayashi Maru is, then yes, it works.
It actually makes
Um,
that was actually a pretty good reference there too. Uh,
And this episode is also a great one to use as a little aside, a great one to use to teach people how Bajorans do their names. The last name comes first, and then obviously their first name. So, for example, the last name of the family is Kira, and then they all have their first names:
right.
Taban, Maru, Nerys. And we learned that Kira had brothers. Those are people that we never see show up in anything before. I guess we're left to
Yeah.
assume that they died in
Uh,
a refugee camp or something, but we
and the
never we
question
never
is, did
saw
they die as
them.
kids? Did they die as adults fighting against the Cardassians? We never. I mean, we haven't
Right?
heard anything, at least not
She's
yet.
She's never mentioned them. Even in this episode, beyond us seeing them initially in the beginning there, we never see them again. So, we hear the father say they're home when the boys are playing, but
Right.
we don't know what happened. Did they join a resistance cell and die? Did they get put in the refugee camp and die? What happened? We don't know anything about them. So there's a loose end that would have been an interesting one. Like, for example, maybe they do an episode where it turns out one of her brothers joined the Kon Ma, like we heard about way back in season one. That's actually what they should have done, was made one of her brothers that guy who had joined the Kon Ma that she had to like betray when he was trying to sell stuff
Ooh,
to the
that would have
Duras
been
sisters.
dark.
That'd have been a
Oh,
great
you
opener
love your dark
episode. I
episodes,
do.
Gary. Gosh.
I do. There's
Ah,
there is no heart here, people. Nothing here. All right. just pain.
void.
That's it. And I'm bringing
Pain
it out. That's it. There is
of the
nothing in
void.
there.
Oh man. Ah,
Mm.
gosh.
Well, I think that's really going to do. Like, again, yeah, as you said before, whenever the episodes are really good, we obviously can fill our time, but we don't. There's not a lot of extra here. But this is a really great episode. I would definitely recommend this one for other people to not skip. I wouldn't say jump right in with this one, but
Right.
definitely not skip. And if you're doing any kind of rewatch, take your time with this one and just really kind of, you know, what conclusion do you draw when you watch this one? Is Maru a collaborator? Is she ultimately the best kind of hero for sacrificing herself, her whole
Right.
existence for her children? Is she somewhere in between? Should Kira have gone ahead with the bombing? Should she have done what she did and not? Like, what would you have liked here? So I would love to hear some other people's takes on this as well. And as you
Yeah.
know, you can reach us with those various social medias and whatnot. But any final thoughts here, David, on
I
this
just
episode?
wanted to quickly say I forgot to mention this earlier when so the actress who plays Baru is Leslie Hope, and she as soon as I saw her face, I was like, I recognize that face. She she plays in the show Suits. She plays a hard ball prosecutor that they go up against at one point in the show Suits. She was Terry Bauer, or the wife of um, the main character of 24 in the first season of 24. She had really short hair in that episode or in that season, so she looked really different. But here she has like longer hair. She was in Lost in Space, the reboot on Netflix that was out for a couple of years. I only saw season one of that. I think she was the
I
villain
saw
of
that. I
that.
don't remember. I was gonna say I don't remember her being in that episode or being in that
I think
show,
she was
but
the I think she was the villain, but I might be wrong. I don't remember who played the villain in that episode or in that show, but it's the one I'm thinking of. But anyway, so yeah, she stood out to me whenever I uh first saw her when she showed up on screen. I was like, that face looks familiar. Who is she? So uh, anyway,
hmm, okay.
maybe she's not the villain of Lost in Space. I'm looking at it now, and I'm not seeing her
No,
name pop
no,
up
she wouldn't have been the
necessarily.
villain.
But
She would have been something else.
yeah, who was the villain on that?
It was those weird alien robot things, and then you had the woman who played Dr. Robinson, Ali Sheedy.
Oh, it's Parker Posey who plays the villain in at least season one of uh,
Hmm.
Lost in Space. She's she steals the identity of someone else and
Yeah, she steals the
wreaks havoc.
identity of yeah, yeah, because she was
Yeah,
crazy. I remember that.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Well,
I
anyway, I
recognize
think that's
Leslie Hope's face, and you know, just wanted to say that.
well. Okay. Well, I mean, I knew the name or I knew the face. I couldn't remember what other things I'd seen her in. Um, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, to say, yeah, real quick to answer Vincent's question, can you believe people are out there actually defending Ducat? Yes. Yes, I can believe it. This is not the first time that people have defended Ducat. And I don't get those people. There actually, that reminds me, way back when these episodes were new and airing, there was apparently a lot of write-in, like mail stuff about Ducat, and people wanting him to be saved and be redeemed, and defending him then, and he's saying things like he's not that bad of a guy and that Ducat's got a point, and so forth and so on. So this is not new. It's not new at all. People have come The way that people have come to defend the villains and things is shocking.
Right.
The guy he's the true he is the villain. There's no other no other category for him. So when people are like,
100%.
"Oh, well, he's not that bad," or "It's not what you think," or "Yes, it is. It
Right.
is what I think," because that's
Right.
how the story goes. Okay,
Right.
so cut that out. It's
Yeah.
creepy.
The
You
only
know.
time a character like him can ever be quote unquote redeemed is if he pulls a Darth Vader versus the Emperor, where he kills the other big bad to save the heroes and then dies himself. Like
Yeah,
he
he would have
doesn't
to
get,
die.
he would
He
have
can't
to
go on and
die.
live. And yeah,
Nope.
no,
There's no
no,
happy
he
ever
has to.
after type of
No,
redemption
not for
for a
that kind
character
of
like
character.
this.
Yeah, no,
Not at
he has
all.
to die. He
Yeah.
has to die. Yeah, I agree. He has to die. To complete his true redemption arc, it's very much a posthumous redemption.
Yes.
Cannot be a thing where he now gets to ride off into the sunset with the good guys and the girl on his arm. No, no, no.
Exactly.
He had a brief moment where that could have been his ending, and he ruined it. So no, we're not doing that.
As soon
Well,
as his daughter was dead too. Like that was
oh
the
yeah,
ultimate end point. Yeah.
yeah. He
Yeah.
lost his last connection to anything good when Zial died, and
Yeah.
that's just where I want to leave him. He is now solidly the villain, and anybody who comes to me trying to defend Ducat, I'm gonna turn them into a spoonhead. So, you know,
Oh, that's right. That
okay,
was a
that's
great. I don't think they've been called spoonheads before. Have we heard that derogatory term?
um,
Imagine we have, but it certainly was used multiple times in this
yeah, I
episode.
Yeah, I think we might have heard it in like season 1 or 2, maybe like once or twice.
Okay,
And
because spoonhead
'cause
is straight on correct. That
yeah,
bit right here is spoon shaped. That's certainly true.
yeah. Um no, it's
Imagine,
perfect. It's perfectly fitting. Perfectly
yeah,
fitting. Yeah. But yeah, I could never defend Ducat at all.
right.
There is a podcast called The Decon Chamber, which features two Star Trek Enterprise alums, Dominic Keating and Connor Trenier. That would be Malcolm Reed and Trip Tucker, respectively. And they recently interviewed some other Star Trek legends on their podcast, one of whom was the chief makeup and costume designer for Deep Space Nine. And he talks about the development of the Spoonhead. Apparently, he got the idea when he was going through an LA costume shop, and this woman was applying costume makeup on somebody, like as a demonstration, and she made a mistake, and it left this kind of impression in the forehead of the person that she was working on, and she was trying to fix it, but he saw it, and it kind of like crystallized in his brain. He's like, I'm gonna use that, and then
Yeah.
boof, he incorporated it into the Cardassians. Also, the corrugated neck that we see on the Cardassians, we can contribute that creation to Mark Alimo, because apparently he has a really long
Oh,
neck,
you've mentioned this.
and when they put the Cardassian uniform on him, it really, really, highlighted the fact that he had this very long neck, and they needed to do something because, like the makeup and stuff, the prosthetics and everything for the face, they couldn't get everything to match up, and it was just, it looked really awkward going from the face to the overly exposed neck and collar bones and everything like that. So that's why they came up with what they did for him, and it stuck with the rest of the Cardassians, which, it's weird. I don't know if it's because he's like the main villain, so they do his makeup differently than they do the others. But if you look at the other Cardassians, they don't look nearly as good in the stuff as he and Ducat, or he and Garrick do.
Mm,
So I always found that fascinating. Like these two characters, they seem to really wear it well, versus anybody else who's dressed as a Cardassian. You're kind of like, what's wrong with you? You look like like they forgot to stencil you in all the way. You
right.
know, so it's weird.
Yeah. Ugh,
Well,
man.
well, all right. I think that's going to do it for us on Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night. I actually need to read that Shelley. Uh, I think it's a song that he writes
Well,
from Prometheus Unbound.
yeah, it's written as a poem in the quote I'm seeing here on Wikipedia, but it's listed as a drama published in
Hmm.
1820. Um,
I'd be interested
four
to check it
act.
out.
Oh, a four-act lyrical drama is what it says here when you click on it. So it is
Okay.
basically a poem. So
Okay. And just real quick to reiterate, as I said before, there are 10 orbs. The orbs that we've seen are the orb of change, the orb of wisdom, and the orb of time, which is one we saw in this episode. The next ones coming up for us will be the orb of contemplation, and then the orb of the emissary. So that makes five that we will see on screen. Then there's a whole other five that we know nothing about. I think that would be a great um, something for them to do as as a show at some point. But who knows where Trek's going to go in the next few years, if at all. But that's it, guys. I think that's going to definitely do it for us on this one. Again, you can find us and follow us anywhere you happen to do your social medias. I need to stop saying that because it's not true anymore. You will not find us on Twitter, X, whatever you call it. Just not going to happen. And we're not on Instagram either. So really, it's YouTube and Facebook. If you want to get a hold of us, you can send your messages through one of those particular sites. If you want to listen to us, that you can do on any particular platform where you happen to access your podcast. I happen to do it on Spotify. And yes, I am aware that some of them are coming out a bit later than what they originally scheduled for. Still trying to fix that. Please bear with us. And heck, probably by the time you hear this one, hopefully it will all have been taken care of anyway. So it won't even matter. But yeah, just to be aware, I know. Okay. So now you know that I know. All right. So until next time, guys, take care of yourselves.
thanks, guys.